Well, we're here today to talk about your brilliant new album, Chaos Angel, which I'm very excited to talk to you about because I love it, but also because you have said that this is your favorite album that you've made thus far. I was
Yeah, I
wondering.
mean, I hope I say that about every album I make. I hope that I'm never like this new one, it's okay, but that old one I made, I that's the best. I hope that's not true. It's been true for every record I've made so far, and I want it to keep being true because I think it's good to be more excited by your life today than your life yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. What is it about this record that you love so much right now compared to Blush and Moss?
I think that it's that I put honestly, I Christian Lee Hudson, who produced it, really encouraged me to include my own writing in it.
Mm,
And not just I've always written all the words, but I think I used to see myself as like a poet in a band. And this is the first time I felt like a musician. Um, and because there's a bunch of melodies on the record that I wrote, and not just all the words, but so I think I feel more agency over it in that way, and not as kind of an odd way to put out a book of poetry, but actually a record.
mm.
And so I think that's part of what makes it. I feel a lot of ownership over the record and agency over it, um, and so there's that. And then I also think that I've just gotten to know my own style better as a writer, and am honing in on. I think I used to try to be obscure for no reason. Like I used to try to kind of hide the truth of what I was saying in a elaborate metaphor that you'd have to listen to a bunch of times to understand what I'm talking about. And to me, this album is very direct,
Mm.
and I'm proud of that. And I think I just have learned more about how to produce music and close the gap between what I hear in my head and what comes out of the speaker.
Mm. I'm going back to how you think you've changed as a songwriter. Do you think that you kind of just need to grow in confidence to be able to be that direct and to be kind of like uncloaked in your lyrics?
So I also think I needed some different inspirations. I think
Mm.
that I was extremely inspired and still am by poets like Dickinson and the St. Vincent Millay and Coleridge and these people who wrote in really elaborate language sometimes. I mean, Emily didn't, but she wrote in, sometimes it's hard to understand what she's talking about, these metaphors that you have to dissect, like just like the brain is wider than the sky, for if you hold them side by side, the one the other will contain. It's like, what does that mean? And I think I was inspired by that, like of honing in on what was the most, like if I were to paint a picture of how I was feeling and then write a poem about the picture that I painted and then write a song based on the poem from the picture that I like, just these levels of removal
Mhm.
that can bring you to a wider metaphoric wisdom, but that also can kind of break the chain of intimacy between you and your listener, especially in song. The thing with the written word is the written word demands more from you as a reader. You have to sing it, right? You have to find the music in it. But a song is such an extraordinary communication tool that you don't need to add that much more stuff to it. You can really be quite direct. You can say, I want you, I love you, like you can be clear. And the music, and on the written page, that's not much of a poem.
Mm.
But if put to music in the right way, it can hit almost like original thought, almost like I want you, I love you is a new idea. And that's the incredible power that music has to communicate with human beings. So I does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, yeah. How do you feel about kind of putting out an album that is more direct and having people being able to understand it that instantly, I guess, and having, I guess, saying "I want you, I love you" can be quite vulnerable sometimes when you're saying it in that direct a way.
It can. I mean, like, there's no like gossipy secrets on this record, really, which
Yeah.
I shouldn't say. I should say it's full of gossipy secrets, and please come to figure out the what's going on the set of Stranger Things. That's what I should say. But the truth is, I don't feel like that wildly exposed by any personal detail, and I feel like that's something that's happening in music a lot right now, is like there's some feud or drama between these two people that are both famous and the song is going to illuminate something about that. I feel like that's that's something that pulls me in to listen to records sometimes, but I don't have any of that stuff. It's just personal. It's just, and what's revealing about it is that it reveals the way I think.
Mm.
Um, Not exactly what I'm thinking about, but the way that I think. And so that's revealing and personal, but not in a way that I'm worried that People magazine is going to write, we've revealed the inner country of Maya's imagination and how she moves through pain and narrativizes her experiences. Like, it's not salacious, but it is personal.
Yeah, for sure. With the title of this album, Chaos Angel, that was inspired by your new movie, Wildcat. And that kind of led you to this idea of the guardian angel of love who tries to do good but just causes chaos instead. I was
Yes.
wondering how this Chaos Angel kind of represented or reflected you at the time that you were writing this album.
It's come to mean a couple different things to me, so it's a little bit confusing.
Mm,
But the thing that inspired me was this one line, where Flannery O'Connor describes herself fighting with her guardian angel, that she would punch at it. And that really got me thinking about the way we all do that, whatever imagery and metaphoric language you like, if you like to call it your instincts or your gut or your guardian angel or your whatever, if you like you can call it a lot of things, but we all know what it is.
mm,
And it's the voice in our head that says, I think you don't need to have that next drink. Or maybe this relationship isn't that good for you. You seem a little like nervous all the time. Or maybe it's time to go, maybe you shouldn't, get mad at your boss today. Maybe he's having a bad day and you should go home. Just the thing that says, maybe take a deep breath, whatever, like that thing. And that this record is me talking to that voice,
mm,
and reflecting on experiences I've had where I didn't listen and where I fought with it, and reflecting on experiences I've had where I have listened and where I've learned to listen. And so there's kind of that, which is the truest thing. But then I also enjoyed this story, and this idea that what if you're also, this other thing can happen where your instincts can be bad things can happen to you, in your childhood or in whatever time in your life, and it can knock your instincts off course, where you hear a voice that says, don't tell that person you're upset. You should lie about that thing. No one will love you if they know that that's true. And that to me is like a sick guardian angel,
mm.
and it's your protective instincts gone awry. And so I think that that's where I also focused in on this idea of the character of what if I could personify my sick angel. What if I could talk to her and say, like, hey, you're okay. You just got a little confused about what your job is, and like, what if I could communicate with my instincts and therefore help heal them, so that when I do hear a voice in my head that says, don't say that out loud right now, I can trust it.
Mm.
And it's not some little beaten down kitten that is just afraid. So that's kind of what does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, it does, yeah. With that, in terms of that, I guess there's the other part of the Chaos Angel narrative, which is like when she retraces her steps over the destruction that she's caused, she finds that she's actually left beauty and goodness or that's kind of sprung up in her wake. How does that kind of tie into the healing like, side of it, I guess?
Well, I think that this interesting thing happened to me. I mean, and now this is personal, but again, not about anyone that anyone else would be interested in. But I went through a period of time of having an extreme amount of regret
Mm,
over my behavior in romantic relationships. I just really didn't. I hadn't been in a relationship that lasted longer than a year, and I was kind of in a state of serial monogamy, of getting into one and then getting out of it and then starting a new one.
mm,
And I had this joke that was, the relationship was never the problem, but breaking up was always the cure. Where I would get this rush of this feeling of freedom, and and when it happened, and then I would immediately go try to tie myself down to something else. And it's kind of was this pendulum that I was swinging between the desire to be free and the desire to be safe.
Mm.
um and that I would want to be whenever I was free, I'd be like, I just want to be grounded, I just want to get grounded in my apartment and grounded in my relationship and grounded in this way. And then I would ground myself in all these ways, and then I'd be like, oh, I can't breathe, I can't, and so um I stopped doing that. And in the first wave of not doing it anymore, I had a lot of self-hatred for having done it.
Mm.
And I then, after a little time went by, and I realized that from all those experiences, I'd made a lot of friends, that I didn't have a long list of people that hated me or wouldn't pick up my calls if I called them, or people I hated or had done me wrong. I didn't have this like ferocious list of people that I wouldn't talk to. I had friends, actually, and people who we'd worked through our experience together and moved it into a friendship.
Mm.
And um and that was so beautiful, and that I valued it so much. And that's kind of where the idea of this chaos angel came from, was, the chaos was created to exist, but actually it led to things that are of more value. In
Mm.
my opinion, friendship is the highest reign of relationship, because there's no societal pressure once you're an adult to make friends, or it's your own choice. It's people that choose to be around you, not because you can provide them with a home or sex or whatever. They just love you. And that's so beautiful. So that's kind of that's my answer to that question.
Was the title track the first song that you wrote for this album, or where did this album begin?
This album began with Christian Lee Hudson, who produced it, hearing me walk around a house singing the title track.
Mm.
And I'd had that melody and some of those lyrics for over 2 years, almost, within the period of time before I'd made my second record, even before Moss. I'd had that. And he was like, hey, that's really good. And what is that? And I was like, oh, it's just this thing I've been working on for ages. And I was like, but I'm sure I'll just take the lyrics and I'll separate them and I'll give them to someone, I'll give them to you or Will or Ben, and we'll do something with it someday. I just have to finish it first. And he was like, we don't need new music. That's great. And I was like, whoa, okay, cool. And it was through his encouragement that I started to put my own music on this record. And that was the first song that he noticed. And then I worked on it for a while, and wrote and rewrote the verses and choruses, and until it got to where it is. So yes, it was the first song written for this record. And I didn't even know that I was writing it for this record when I wrote it, nor did I know that it would exist on this record with the music that it has.
Mm. How did having that encouragement to put your own music on this album and to kind of accept yourself as a musician, see yourself as a musician, change how this album turned out, do you think?
It changed how I felt about it.
Mm.
I don't know. And it changed my command over the music. And my relationship to it as my music. I think for a while I saw like I just didn't see myself as a musician. I saw myself as a poet in a band. And now I do, and that's, I mean, that was the change. And it made me put more of myself in other places on the record. It made me feel safe to put myself everywhere, I guess.
Mm. Yeah. Instead of just like the lyrics, I guess, did you feel like you were kind of expressing yourself through melody, through chords in new ways that you hadn't been able to before, hadn't wanted to before?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say, in my desire to be constant, to be honest all the time, really, chords is the next step. I
Hmm.
really know, I know very simple chords,
Yeah.
and I know all the basics, and but I don't know like an interesting, cool new way to play G. I play it the way that they teach you on the first day of your guitar lesson. And Will and Ben and Christian know amazing ways to play the same chord in 50 different ways. And I so I don't feel like I have the command to express myself emotionally through chords yet, but
Hmm.
and melody and lyrics, I feel I do.
Hmm.
And I'm working on chords.
Yeah. Many amazing songs have been written with just the most simple chords, though, and simple way of changing chords, I guess, too.
Oh, totally. I mean, most of my favorite songs have the chords that I write with. Um, but there is different emotional connotation to all different kinds of chords, and I get very excited figuring out what the chords are going to be with my band, and um, or how the phrasing of the chords are going to operate. That's extremely exciting to me.
Yeah. I noticed in the credits on this album that the second half of the record is credited just for the writing to you and Christian, whereas the first half of the album, sorry, you have a kind of group of writers on different songs. Was this album kind of written in two halves almost, or is it kind of written in different ways between the two halves, would you say?
I would say you're generally that there's a random accuracy to that. That
Mhm.
you're right. The end of the album does have more of just me and Christian, but it also has Wrong Again on it. No, Wrong Again's at the beginning now. I guess maybe you're just totally right. But or Big Ideas at the beginning, and just Christian and I wrote on that one together. But I think that it's basically I some songs on this record were written more in my um older style, like Wrong Again. No, not it's not even true actually, Wrong Again. But um, I think that Christian helped me the most with the songs that I had written.
Hmm.
Like I wrote Big Idea and like was playing on the car, and he was like, we could make it better in these ways. Like if we added this riff and used this chord instead of that chord, if we use F minor instead of just leaving a space there and then going, they would make it more interesting. So he and then we ended up writing Hang In There together after the record was out in a way that I'd almost rarely written a song before, which was just like actually together. Like I was like, what if we went like this? And then it went this way. And then, and he was like, what if it went like this? And so I think that's kind of why there are some that are just the two of us in it. Like, is that he was really helpful at for me to finish the things that I'd written,
Mm.
to bring them over the line. Uh, and then Ben and Will and I all all the songs that were written by all of us and Christian were written in so many different weird ways I couldn't begin to explain. But uh, but the second and first half is random.
Yeah.
It's just how I ended up sequencing it.
Hmm.
I think you know Ben has this incredible ear for poppier melodies. He's like just I think an extraordinary pop writer and producer, and um, so I think that I wanted the first half of the album to come out of the gate punching, and so that's why Missing Out's up there and Big Idea, and I think and then Will and I were Wrong Again, and that always had kind of actually mostly been in the sequence later in the record. I
Hmm.
almost at times I thought about it as a last song. But I love that song and it is folkier, and I didn't want it to get lost at the end of the record. And so I don't know. I'm taking you through menial decision making about sequence, but it's totally random.
Mm.
The sequence. It's just how I felt it would flow the best.
Yeah, fair enough. Um,
Though I did at a certain point always know Black Ice was the first song, Chaos Angel was the last song.
why did you want those two to be the two bookends then?
Because they both have these outros, for lack of a better word, that were dealing with the mantra. And I
Mm.
was playing with mantra a lot on the record. I mean, it's in Wrong Again, it's in You're Okay, I'm Okay, it's in Oh No, or Better. I can't remember what I ever ended up calling it, but the kind of auto tune
Yeah.
dirge. And it's all over the record. but the two strongest ones, in my opinion, were those two, and they really hold my thesis for the record. Like, they really are, you know. And Black Ice was where I started. It was the first song for the record, and Chaos Angel was, I thought it was going to be the last song written for the record. Hang in There ended up being the last song written for the record, but I thought it was, and it, if I only had two songs to put out that were Chaos Angel, it'd be those two. It'd be the progress that I make in, and really they almost should be in inverse order. Like, Chaos Angel is so much messier and is so much more raw and kind of fucked up. And Black Ice is really my thesis, is like, give up and be loved, let yourself be loved, stop fighting, stop ignoring your guardian angel, just like let the good stuff in, and deal with your past and reflect on it, and move forward. And then Chaos Angel is rougher and more raw, but I felt like Big Idea was this sort of wish for the future, and then Chaos Angel is kind of the big reveal of the turmoil of the past, I guess.
Yeah. You mentioned the mantra that you have in this album, which is in the title track. There's the mantra of "I want you, I love you, I promise, I'm sorry."
Yeah.
What's the idea about that? How does that kind of connect to the rest of the album? Because those are words that are kind of written throughout the record, right?
Yeah, and there are feelings that appeared throughout the record, and they were in what I was talking about before, with that cycle of being on the pendulum swing. I realized that my relationships were moving in that circle of, I want you is the beginning. Oh my God, I see you, I want you. Oh. I love you. Whoa, I see you, I want you. I know you, I love you, right? And then I promise to love you forever and want you forever and be here forever. And then, ooh, whoops, I'm sorry. No, I don't actually. I can't be here forever. I can only be here for when I was here. And so I think that that's, you know, the journey that I was on. And I saw it as this kind of cyclical pattern. And I thought about titling the record that at a time period. I want you, I love you, I promise, I'm sorry. But it connects to the rest of the record in that I feel like the rest of the record is an invitation to figure out how to break that cycle.
Yeah.
And the last line of the record is "I love you." You know, and that's where I mean, even on my last record, I had a lyric that was, "Love is such a better thing to do." And that, you know, that's really how I see it, is that it's a much better way to be, to just put love out into the universe, you know, and to, in whatever shape it is, forms. If it's love to your family, love to your coworkers, love to a lover, love to a friend, love to an ex-lover, it's all love.
What do you think that songwriting and music has taught you about love?
It's taught me more about collaboration. And that's my favorite form of love, is collaboration. And I think that I like to see all of my relationships as a collaboration. You know, we're collaborating on this friendship. Is it working for you? Do you wish it had more of this in it or more of that? We're collaborating on this interview, you know? But I think that Ben and Will and Jesse are who I made my first record with along with some other people. But then I made my second record with Ben and Will and Christian, and now my third record has Ben, Will, Christian, and Jesse came and worked on it. And so I think that that's moving through different phases of your life and figuring out ways to work with the same people in all those different phases. I think it's just the most beautiful thing ever, and I've learned a lot about that from my band.
Yeah, I love that. One of the other writers on your album is your brother. You've obviously worked with your dad on Wildcat, you've worked with your mum in the past as well, which I'm sure are all very different experiences, different projects. But broadly speaking, what would you say are the joys of working on creative projects with your family and with people who know you the best and the most intimately?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, Will and Ben and Christian and Jesse are also all my family.
Yeah.
As far as I see it, you know. And I love working with people that I know well. I mean, I think most people do.
Mm,
Um, like I think, you know, there's so many brother sister songwriting teams, and um it can be really vulnerable writing with other people, extremely vulnerable and scary, because you want the thing to be the best it can be. You also want people to like your idea. And I think that that's working with people that think you are of value,
mm.
that you have good ideas. It makes it easier when they say that idea was bad to go, okay, you're just saying that idea was bad, not that I am bad.
Yeah, you kind of know that they approve, well, not approve of you, but appreciate your talents already. You don't need that validation from them, I guess.
Yeah, and so you can take more criticism, so
Yeah.
you can handle them pushing you harder.
Hmm. Another song on this album, Missing Out, was inspired by the time you spent with your brother at Brown, where he goes to school, and kind of tapping into this college experience that you'd never had. What did you think that you were missing out on before you started hanging out with him and his friends there? And did you kind of learn that you had been missing something or that you hadn't been missing something actually?
Yeah, I learned that I had been, you know, and that everyone said to me that the thing to fear about not going to college and not doing that was not putting in the time with your own generation, you know,
Mm,
not getting to meet those people who will be there, because it's just 4 years and then they're going to graduate and they're all going to be friends and you're going to have been this weird freak hanging out with 40-year-olds, you know. And so um and I learned that I really had missed out on that. It's
mm,
beautiful, like kids working together, putting on plays together, writing their own, being interested in their own work, studying old work. It's a beautiful thing. um but I also learned to have love for my own choices and where my life had gone and the people that it had helped me find, and that was also okay, you know, that it was, that both things were okay. I think I like, when I first was hanging out there, I like would cry in conversations about whether or not the SAT was a good judge of intelligence. um and by the end I was like, maybe it is, maybe it's not. It's not my kind of intelligence, and I'm okay with my life.
mm.
You know, and I think that was a big transition for me.
Yeah. Did you think that you kind of needed that kind of validation of your path almost, that it had been different from other people's, and kind of feel more secure in that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think, you know, my both my parents didn't go to college,
Mm,
and so I think that they had a dream that their kids would have a different path than they did, and do better. You know, like every family, or you know, most people's parents want their kids to do better and do more and have more time and more freedom than they had. And so I'd really felt like I was letting them down when I didn't, you know.
mm,
And then and so that was its own thing. But I think through that experience of being with my brother, I both realized that they'd really been right about a lot of stuff. There was a lot, that there was a ton of stuff that I had missed because I didn't go, but also that I'd experienced other things that were of equal value.
mm. In that song you sing, I've been someone to talk about, I want to be someone to talk to. Is that kind of relating to perhaps people seeing you as a public persona or a perception of a public persona rather than the person, Maya, that you've experienced over time?
Yes, yes.
Mm,
I think that's exactly, I mean, I can say more about it, but I think that that's exactly, you just got the nail on the head. That's what I would have said
yeah.
is, and also not, and not just that, also I think in the same way, in kind of the way that this record is really about relationships,
Mm,
uh you know, even in a normal way, not in like a public figure way, in a normal way, if you do have some chaotic relationships, you're likely going to get gossiped about.
mm,
You know, um and that and that never feels good, because you never, you know, no one ever understands your point of view or whatever on what happened, or,
mm,
but I think that that's the thing, being like, oh, I don't want to be like some wild person running around with people being like, oh, do you know what Maya like, like, and not like in the public, just in my own community, like,
Yeah.
and I'd rather be someone to talk to, and confide in and be trustworthy and be seen as a friend and a good secret keeper, and you know and I know someone really well who I went to their birthday party a couple years ago, and so many people were at their birthday party, and all of the people at their birthday party really knew them and
Mm.
really trusted them and saw them as a confidant and a creative inspiration and all of these wonderful qualities that one wants to see in people that they like. And then and I was like, oh, I want to be like that when I'm older. I want to be the kind of person that other people have trusted and that other people have seen as worthy and reliable and kind. That's who I want to grow up to be. And so I think that's what that lyric is, maybe even more about that than
Mm.
about the public eye, so to speak.
Hmm. That sounds like an amazing kind of person to be. I think that's going to
Right?
be you go to. And you've mentioned before in this conversation kind of how your songwriting has changed. I noticed that particularly in Okay or You're Okay. I'm not sure which version you're calling it, but
Me neither.
I think in that song that kind of is largely focused just on two lines. If you're okay, then I'm okay. I was wondering what it was about that song that was kind of telling you that actually you don't need to add that much more to it, and it's kind of its own storytelling just as it is with mostly just those two lines.
I was really inspired by this song "You Can Make Me Feel Bad If You Want To" by Phosphorescent. um they really just repeat that phrase over and over again. You can make me feel bad if you want to, and the song hit me like a truck, and the repetition of the phrase expanded the phrase. There's an idea in acting, which is that if you repeat the same thing twice, if you say shut up, shut up, shut up, every
Mm,
time you say it, it has to have a different meaning. um Even just subtly, there has to be a reason that you're saying it again, because
mm,
every phrase in a play, in a movie, in a song is of value. Every second of time that you're bothering the audience to listen to you has value. And uh I think that I this phrase came to me, if I'm okay then you're okay, as kind of a story of codependence,
mhm.
of when you're only okay when someone else in your life is okay, whoever it is, where if they're happy, you're happy, and if they're sad, you're sad. And it's another pattern I was trying to break. I mean, this record is about breaking patterns and trying to find a way to be okay even when someone else in my life wasn't okay. And it felt like worthy of repeating to me.
Yeah, I feel like it kind of grows in power, kind of almost like you said, every time that you sing it as well.
Thank you.
With OK as well, I read that that was inspired by Cassavetes' under A Woman Under the Influence. How did that movie kind of play into that song?
Oh, interesting. Well, codependence and alcoholism are so linked. And that movie is an incredible picture of dependency, codependent relationships, and a codependent relationship to alcohol. And um, I was inspired by that. And I was also really inspired by the visuals of that movie for my visual landscape of this record. What the album cover would look like, the movie
Yeah.
poster. I was inspired by it. So that's kind of the connective tissue.
At the end of Big Idea, you sing, I saw the best minds of my generation dismantle a system only to replace it, huddled around burning Rome, looking for love. I was wondering what you're talking about in those lines.
I think I'm talking about, well, I want people to not know. I want people to decide for themselves what they think it means. But I'll
Mm,
tell you what I think it means is I was interested in this feeling that my generation is rightfully rebuking the rules and confinements and ideas of the generations that have come before us in an attempt to find equality and liberation. But what's also happening is they're getting extremely or the internet is creating an environment where we're extremely unforgiving with people and aren't totally offering people permission to learn and grow and change, and are almost getting punishing in the same way that like the church is punishing of like, thought crime, and not really having this liberated mindset of you can grow, you can change, you can make mistakes, you can heal. We want to teach you. We want to welcome you onto our team of fighting the good fight. It becomes this, I feel like so many people feel like speaking out about what they want to have changed is a lose-lose scenario because so many people will disagree with you. And even the people who agree with you will pick apart the way you spoke up, the way that you came out, that you forgot to do this other thing as well. And I think that we're going to chase our own tail doing that and that we need to create a welcoming and exciting environment with which to change and to wake up, and we're not doing that. And so that's dismantle the system only to replace it. I'm explaining it and I'm only at the second line. And then it's huddled around burning Rome looking for love. I think we're all like, the world is ending, but we also have to live our own lives and care about our own stupid menial drama and our own little art projects. And, is the world ending? I mean, the whole song is kind of like, what do we do about the fact that it really seems like the world is ending? Because every generation has always thought that they would be the last, but now we have all these scientists saying the world is ending. And like, so are we actually the last? Or is that an ego thing? Like thinking we are important enough to be the last, and if we really are the last, we probably should like really start trying to do something about it. Right. But we're all just like sitting around wondering what, like is happening in Jennifer Lawrence's personal life or whatever, and so it's like, what are we doing? Is it the apocalypse? In which case we should start preparing, or is it not the apocalypse? In which case we should stop worrying about it, And so that's huddled around burning room looking for love. And I believe in one God that nobody should trust is kind of intentionally obscure. I mean, it means something to me, but I won't even say what it means exactly. I'm just closing my door.
No worries. You've talked about in the past about how music and kind of acting sides of your creativity feed into each other, because in one you're learning about yourself, and the other you're learning about the world and about other people. What lessons would you say that you've picked up about the world through acting that you can see as being present in this album?
Interesting. I think through playing parts, I've grown to discover more parts of myself, like I'm not exactly like Robin on Stranger Things, but there are parts of me that are a lot like her. And I think playing her helped me to explore those parts and come to accept them and find grace for them in me, like the part of me that can't stop talking, and the part of me that has had massive periods of time of confusion and revelry over the exploration of my sexuality, and the parts of me that are sarcastic and uncoordinated, and I grew to have love for those parts and to explore them further for her benefit, and therefore for my own benefit as well, and there's tons of that in the record. And I think in other characters, it's always that too, and when I was playing Flannery, I learned things about my loneliness, and my feeling of not being really understood by anyone. I explored that in my part in Asteroid City. I explored the part of me that wants to control other people around me and like get them to play my game, do my story, learn my, so I think that's by empathizing with people who aren't like you, you learn things about you, and that maybe they're not as unlike you as you thought.
Do you think that through your work, both as a musician and as an actor, that you're able to become a better person then in maybe a way that if you had chosen this other path of going to college and getting a job in the, quote unquote normal job, that maybe you wouldn't have been able to learn those things at this point in your life?
No idea. I
Fair
just
enough.
have no, I'm sure I would have.
Mhm.
I mean, I just have no idea.
Yeah.
Um, because, and I'm sure I would have, because of no matter what no matter what I ended up doing, if I hadn't gotten as lucky as I was and gotten to start my career, that's extremely lucky.
Yeah.
And if that hadn't have happened, it wouldn't have stopped me from making art. I wouldn't have stopped me from doing plays at the school that I was, or like, applying to be a teacher of acting somewhere and exploring things that way. I, it wouldn't have stopped me from writing songs, even if no one wanted to listen to them. I'm my, when it came time for my decision of what I wanted to do with my life, I had to make sure that I was invested in the arts beyond the arts ability of what the arts could do for me, and really of what I could do for the arts, right? And that's um and that, would I be as happy as an acting teacher, and as a an English teacher or an acting teacher, or as a someone working in like regional theater, and I had to ask myself those questions: is would I want to do that too if this didn't work out, if I didn't get the privilege of talking to you about my work and other people talking about it and engaging with it, if that didn't happen, would I still want to do it? And when I realized the answer was yes, that's when I felt good about committing my life to the arts,
Mm.
especially because in the way I grew up, I was so aware of the pitfalls of fame and attention. And my dad gave this incredible speech that I highly recommend you listen to at the Gotham Awards a few years ago, about how many times in his career he's bottomed out, where he thought his career was over and that he would never work again or make any money again as an actor. And that will happen. You go through these periods of bottoming out and making sure that you wanted to be an artist as much in those periods in time as you do when a new season of Stranger Things is coming out and everyone wants to talk to you and thinks you're special. And so I think I would have found a way to learn the same stuff.
And you are maybe going to be thinking about experiencing those periods where you're bottoming out, perhaps, does it make you feel like you have more of a safety net, or more like, you know, it doesn't matter if that's what happens because you're going to be involved in this in the future anyway?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I often go to sleep fantasizing about when I will be seen as qualified enough to be allowed to teach an acting class, or a little writing workshop, or like I love people, and I love making art, and I love the spirit of no wrong answers. I maybe because I'm dyslexic and I went to school and I really suffered in classes where there were right and wrong answers.
Mm.
But I really excelled in classes where there weren't, in art classes. And so the idea of getting to provide that for other people, of a space where there are no wrong answers, and it's about your expression, and like that, being able to offer that to other people excites me a lot. And I really actually can't wait for the day that I do that.
Mm. That's lovely. I want to go back very quickly to Robin, where you were talking about how she's taught you a lot about yourself, or helped you kind of accept different parts of yourself. Given that this
Yeah.
is the last time that you're going to be playing her, how are you feeling about saying goodbye to her as a character?
Well, it won't be a goodbye, because the experience of being on a show like Stranger Things is a once in a lifetime experience, to get to be in something that is successful and good, that you like, that is a value, that I actually think is a value to the world. Like I think the show helps people, gives them joy, gives them heroes, gives them people to look up to, lets themselves see themselves in these characters. I believe in the show, and I believe in the metaphor of the upside down, and as a metaphor for getting through puberty. I believe in that, and and I know that I will be talking to people about that character and that experience the rest of my life. Um, and, going to Comic-Con and meeting people that cared about that character forever. And so it's not a goodbye.
Mm.
But it's very sad to say goodbye to my coworkers that I've been working with for so long, and my scene partners. That character will be with me forever, but the experience of making the show won't be. And that's an experience I'm very sad to say goodbye to.
Where do you hope your career, both in terms of music and acting, goes beyond this kind of the next few projects you have coming up acting wise and beyond this album?
Could I ask you to be more specific?
Yes, you could.
Thank you.
What kind of, I guess, creative ambitions do you have for your career?
I'm always hesitant to say things that I want to do that I haven't done. Like, I want to keep being in movies, and I want to keep making records, and I want everything to do well enough that I'm allowed to do it again. I want to be able to keep my Metro card of being allowed to make art because I love it. And there are other things I'd like to do, other disciplines I'd like to try, and things like teaching. And but I hesitate to say them because it makes me feel like someone who says that they have a screenplay but won't let you read it. Like people at like talking about the things that you want to do that you haven't done in the public feels a little like pretending to be someone you're not. So I don't know. I won't say anything that I don't know is going to happen,
Okay.
but I will say that I've always, one thing that stayed consistent about me is that what's made me love working is working with people who love what they're working on, and that I hope to could just continue in my life. I don't care what genre it is. I love comedy. I love drama. I love sci-fi. I love fantasy. I love romance. I love, I love it all as long as the writing's great. So I just want to keep getting to work with great writers and directors who are passionate about the job that they're doing, and actors who are kind and collaborative and excited. And, that's what I care about.
You mentioned other disciplines. I noticed you've been painting during this interview. Is art something that you would want to try and move into? Or is that just a hobby for you?
It's just a hobby. I mean, I've painted on every album cover I've done except this one. And inside the record, if you buy the record, there's the lyric book has my paintings in it. But I don't want to sell them or do anything with them. I think it's really important. Commerce and art's relationship is very complicated.
Yeah.
And we all want to make art. Gillian Welch has this amazing song, Everything is Free. And artists really do just want to make art no matter what it's going to be, but if you do have success, to any degree, it gets very addictive and can start to change the way you do it and the way you make decisions about what you want to make, where you're not just thinking, do I want to do this? Do I want to play this character? You're also thinking, will this be good for my career? How much are they paying me? Is it a big enough part for the time commitment? All of these questions that aren't creative questions. And you have to think about them to be a person. It is a job, but you also have to find a way to not think about them and forget about them. And I think that having other disciplines of creativity that are just for you and that commerce isn't sneaking into is a really healthy way to keep your flame bright.
How do you think that you kind of avoid falling into the trap of just doing stuff for success because it'd be good for your career?
Well, I think one way is being multidisciplinary and relighting that fire and remembering. And I think the other way is community, is having people in your life that you can say, hey, should I do this job in this place? And they're going to offer me this thing. I don't really like the script, but it's a lot of money and it could be good. And they can go, well, I don't care, if you do that or not. Go for it if you want to, but I won't respect you any more or any less, and people who can be like, you don't need to do that. Why would you do that? Let's work on our next record. Let's work on our garden. Let's work on, you're okay right now. Do you ask you questions like, do you need more money or are you good for a while? like and is it time for you to put that energy into that part of your life, or is it time for you to dedicate more energy to other things? So that's how I think about it.
Yeah. Amazing. Just before I let you go, may I ask you what you have been painting?
Yes.
Thank you. Oh, so pretty.
um
I love that.
Thank you. It's like a little night sky, with some people hanging out here, and there's some pine trees and some regular trees over
Gorgeous.
here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for talking to me today, Maya. It's lovely to speak to you.
Lovely to speak to you too.